Okay, welcome everybody. I want to talk a little today about the phrase on top of the cover sheet. Don't worry, you'll get it definitely. ומשלוח מנות איש לרעהו. It appears twice in the Megillah Esther. Number one, Alkein Hayudim Psukim. We know Psukim. Alkein Hayudim Psukim. What was their spontaneous reaction to the Purim miracle? Os Rav Assaf Bednarsh Simcha Mishta Yom Tov Umishloach Manos Ish L'Reyehu. Simcha Mishta Yom Tov Mishloach Manos Ish L'Reyehu. And that was just their grassroots minhag. What was the official Takanat Rabbanan? The next passage by Yimto Mordechai, etc., etc. And what happens at the end? Lasos Osam Mishta Simcha Mishloach Manos Ish L'Reyehu Umatanos La'ev Yonim. Interestingly, not our topic right now, but there's a significant change you notice between the original minhag and Mordechai's takana. He took out the Yom Tov, apparently thinking perhaps it was a little too much of a baltosif to add the Yom Tov to the Torah, and he added in Matanos Yonim, very classic, that when we perhaps spontaneously decide to celebrate, we might remember ourselves, remember our friends, Mishloach Mano Ish L'Reyehu, but forget those who are less fortunate, and it's the job of the manhigim, of the Talmidei Chacham, their big establishment, to remind us that our circle should include Matanos Yonim. Right, it reminds me of what the Rav says over, right, that when his father went to become a Rav for the first time, Rav Chaim said to him, it's a support job of the Rav, and he gets wrong a number of times. Skip the whole story. And Rav Chaim says, no, to worry about the unfortunate, the widows and the orphans and the poor people, because who else is going to worry about them if not for the Rav? Okay, so we see the Mokar for Rav Chaim in Mordechai, who added in Matanos Yonim, which everyone else forgot. But I want to talk a little tonight about Mishloach Manos. There's a famous shita of the Binyan You've probably heard of it, quoted in the Mishabur Makar 2. Mishloach Mechuvas Binyan Sion Siman Mendalit this topic and Hevi Ba'atzma Manos V'loy B'Shleach Yotze. Since there's a lashon Mishloach Manos Ishloyehu, we know what shlichus means. What do we darshan from the word shlichus in the Torah? For example, beginning the second paragraph of the Constitution, right? Darshans from the lashon of V'shilcha Mibeso that you can send a get through a shliach, and then starts darshan shlichus shadik also in kol tarkula. So the binyan tziyun is besopik. Maybe since it says mishloach manos here, it's it's almost judicial mikra. It doesn't just happen to be the word the root word shinlam ches. It could have said unitinat manos ish l'reyehu or etc. Why say Mishloach Manos? Maybe you need to dafka send it through a shliach and not give it yourself, right? I remember when I was a kid, the parents would always drive around the neighborhood and send their kids to bring it to houses through a shliach. Maybe you need to do it through a shliach. Kaden said Mishloach, name it to be in dafka shlichus, ayin sham, and the mishnah. You look inside that Binyan Sion, the Binyan Sion decides that, well, it's a little too much of a chiddush. He's not sure exactly why that would be misvara, and it is a little funny that, the 1800s, we finally thought of a drush of a pasuk that no one thought of in the, 20, however many hundred years until then. And in the end, he decides he's not sure this is Allah l'maisa, but it would be a nice chumrah to be choshish just in case. And the minhag of those who like to be yotzei all the chumras, based on this mishnah, is to send at least one mishloach manos through a shliach and not give it yourself, to be yotzei in case Mishloach Manos is a lashon of shlichus. The question becomes, why would that be? The Binyan Sion himself, if you look inside, says, but I don't know what the svara would be that you have to give it through a shliach. And we can add to his question, we have a rule in Kol Tarkula, also found in the beginning of the second paragraph of Kedushin, mitzvah bo yoser b'shlucha, right? Most mitzvahs you can do yourself or through a shliach. But it's always better to do it yourself. So why davka would it be, if the Binyan Sion is right? Why would it be that every mitzvah in the Torah, some you have to do yourself, some you can be yotzei of the shliach? But even once you can be yotzei of the shliach, it's mitzvah bo yoser b'shlucho. So why would this davka be the exception of the mitzvah of b'shlucho yoser mi bo? And I want to try to answer that question this evening, and in two drachim, and while we explore those drachim, to bring out some other themes of Purim, one a Londish derech and one a philosophical there. Let's start with the lumdus. We have probably, most people in this room are probably aware of a famous chakira, maybe we'll expand it a little, about mishloach manos. What is the purpose of the takana of mishloach manos? If you look in makar number 3, it all starts with the Trumas Hadeshen, She'ela b'nei adam ha'sholchim chaverim b'Purim chalukim u'shtinim ch'yagavna yotzim de mishloach manos olam. People would send for mishloach manos, housewares, or or technically clothing or linens, etc. You say non-food items for mishloach manos, so that work or not. As a matter of fact, in Europe, there's a number of tshuvas about gedolim who would send chidushei Torah as food for thought. As mishloach manos instead of drinks cakes. So are you yotzin or not? Says the Trumas Hadeshen, Yira'eh de'ein yotzin b'hem, and he gives 2 reasons, right? Why we are very encouraged by this Trumas Hadeshen, because he gives 2 reasons why his psak is that you're not yotzin with non-food items, a conceptual reason and a technical reason. He gives the conceptual reason first. What does he say? The niratam b'mishloach manos hu b'dei she'en l'chol echad dai b'sipek l'kayem hasuda kedina. What's the reason for mishloach manos? So that every Jew could have a Purim suda. There might be some people who don't have food for the Purim suda, like perhaps they're very poor or some other very strange circumstance where they would have no food for the Purim suda. To make sure everyone has food for the Purim suda, if everyone sends someone else food, then even if I have no food on my own, right, by the time I got a bowl of mishloach manos, I'll have, not sure if I'll have a nutritionally balanced Suda nowadays, but I'll certainly have a delicious Suda to eat on Purim. Okay, that's an assumption. They would switch they were very poor, they had no money, so they would switch their meals with each other, mishloach manos, at least according to the Rambam and the Psak of the Machaber, the Shulchan Aruch. And we see the point is to have what to eat for the Purim Suda. At least that's his assumption. And then he gives a technical linguistic reason. We actually don't find the word manos in Tanakh, in biblical Hebrew, means any non-food item. The Rambam is for sure on his side. The Rambam is meat, Havshil, or Ochel. Very clear. Venira, the Shtia B'Klal Achila. Okay, he thinks drink also counts. That's a little controversial. The Rambam says says food or money. So why here does he only say food? It could be 3 types of food. It has to be food. And I bring a raya. If you want to go in Pshuto Shel Mikra, Halacha doesn't always follow Pshuto Shel Mikra. Okay, I have a neighbor on my block who thinks halacha should always follow Pshuto Shel Mikra. But the most poskim don't assume halacha has to follow Pshuto Shel Mikra. But if you want to follow Pshuto Shel Mikra here, you would say, not just look up the word manos in a concordance, slash your Ala Torah, etc. But do we find mishloach manos in Tanakh? And if you either looked ahead or you looked at the keys in Tanakh, where do we find, what holiday do we find mishloach manos in Tanakh besides Megillat Esther? What? Rosh Hashanah and Sefer Nehemiah. Number 4, Vayom le'chu ichlu mashmanim shtu matakim v'shilchu manos le'ein nachol lo v'kodesh hayom la'adonai v'al ti'atzu v'chetos Hashem hu ma'uzchem. They were crying and fasting and mourning on Rosh Hashanah. He said, no, it's a yontif. You have to eat and drink and be merry, or at least eat and drink and be happy. And he says, shilchu mano le'ein nachol lo, send mano to people who didn't prepare for themselves. So this is a good raya for the Trumas Hadeshen. The Pshuto Shel Mikra, Mishloach Manos appears twice in Tanakh, once in Megillat Esther, once in Nehemiah. Nehemiah it is someone who didn't prepare a Suda, giving them what to eat for their Suda Chag, specifically. Maybe here also, it's giving someone what to eat for their Suda Chag. However, there is one other famous approach, which is the Manud HaLevi. The Manud HaLevi is Rav Shlomo Alpemetz. How do we know he's a Levi? Because l'chadodi, what's the acrostic of l'chadodi? Shlomo HaLevi, right? So Shlomo HaLevi, he was the author of l'chadodi, that's what he's famous for. He's secondarily famous for the Manud HaLevi Perush on Megillat Esther. And he says, "V'meshlach manos ish lo yehu kamo shahaya in yonim ish echad likol kol echad im chaveiro hefech ish tzar v'oyev loshem reviyah ha'omer mechad mifuzar umforad." Right? What's the point of Mishloach Manos? Says Rosh Shlomo Alkabeth the Moses Halevi, to show that we are togetherness, to bring togetherness. Because what's a big word in Megillah Esther? A big word in Megillah Esther is what did the Jews do on the 13th of Adar in the war? What was the first verb they did? Nikhalu v'yavoron Hashem. They got together. Now, of course, someone could say, well, they got together because it's hard to fight a war if you're not together. You send 100 soldiers someplace and you don't coordinate them. So maybe it was just a matter of military strategy, but he assumes no. It's deeper than military strategy. It is a spiritual achievement. It is perhaps even a spiritual requirement that Jews be together. The opposite of the lying, tricking Haman, who said Mefuzah and Mefura, they were separated. Point of Mishlach Manos is to be together, to have Ava Ach Reis. When I send presents to people, I am their friend. Sending presents is a way to show friendship. It's a way to bring Jews close together in friendship. He's reading here a whole theme in the story of the Megillah. Right? He's being the Chadish here, a new theme in the story of the Megillah. Right? Everyone always likes to find, like, oh, what's the theme of Megillah Esther? It's always good to remember, like, Pashup Shah. The theme is that Hashem saved us from Haman. But since we don't know that, we don't want to find another theme in Megillah Esther. He says, what's the other theme in Megillah Esther? It's about sectarianism versus Jewish unity. Haman said, Mefuzar ben Ha'amim. They're all split up. And he says, Haman didn't just mean they are geographically distributed. There are some Jews in New York, and some Jews in Los Angeles, and some Jews in Cleveland, and some Jews in Detroit, and some Jews in Houston, etc. No, he meant they are splintered, and they don't get along with one another. And I don't know if Achashverosh necessarily cared about that, but Hashem Yisborach certainly cares about that. And the solution would be, what's the first pasuk of the solution is, bring together the Jews for Nikhalu, to have Jewish unity. Interestingly, this, as an aside, this root word kahal is found a few times in the Chumash, but where is this root word kahal mostly, how is it mostly used in Chumash, specifically in Sefer Devarim? Right? What? Hakel. And what is Hakel a reminder of, or even a reenactment of? Har Sinai. What is Har Sinai called in Sefer Devarim? Yom HaKahal. Many times Yom HaKahal, more Shem Elai. Hakel liyasam. Not the Hakel from the end of Sefer Devarim. The original Hakel, Moshe says, fascinatingly, not our topic for now, but it's something to think about, that in Sefer Devarim, it's never called the day of Matan Torah, the day of revelation, the day of anything, sort of, as it were, what we think of as being Odom L'Makom, even though what could be a greater than L'Makom than Matan Torah. It's always called Yom HaKahal. Apparently, Rashi's drasha of Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad, there's something unique about the Jews' togetherness in order to receive the Torah, something to think about. That there was a Matan Torah, an acceptance of the Torah in the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, and another acceptance of the Torah in the days of Megillah Esther. Perhaps the Kehillah has something to do with this. But in any case, says the Mount Halevi, there's a big theme of Achdus. A big theme of Achdus in the Megillah, and I think this is something that definitely speaks to anyone who's been in Israel over the last 6 months. I think this is an important theme that speaks to us. If we go pre-Sukkot, all the talk was who hates who and who is splintered into groups and who's not with who, etc. And you saw, I'm not getting into whether it's B'derech HaTeva or B'derech Be'al HaTeva, but somehow Haman jumped on that, as it were. And the response post-October 7th was very, very much like Nosas Kalihudim, the Kalu HaYehudim. We sort of divested ourselves of the outward trappings of splintering and sectarianism and found the inner Achdus within us. And of course, the challenge becomes how to preserve that, even after the sense of urgency passes, of course. But I think that's, that is a major theme of Megillah Esther, just as it is for us nowadays, according to the Halevi, and that's why we have Mishloach Manos. Mishloach Manos is a way to be friendly and bring people closer together. Interestingly, I would bring a raya. I know we're right from Shudah Shal Mikra. I'll bring a raya as well from the Mechaber. So it's really not totally fair, because the Mechaber took his Perek division from the Torah for the approach of the Trumas Hadeshen, or at least so it seems up to this point. But the Mechaber says in number 6, the Mechaber is many simonim. If you go through the Shulchan Aruch, many simonim about the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. Right? And then there's a simon about the mitzvah of Matzanot Lev Yomim. And then Tafrei Shadi Hey, Dinei Sudat Purim, a simon about the mitzvah of Sudat Purim. And the Aleph Beis Gimel, Seif about the Suda, and then 6 Dalet, Chayav L'Shloch Aver, Shtei Monot Basar, or Shalmini Ochlan, Shnemer, Shloch Monot Ishtoyehu, etc. All of a sudden, there is no simon for Mishloach Monot. It's in the simon of Sudat Purim. That would be a good raya for the Trumat Hadeshen. That it's about making sure people want to eat for the Sudas Purim. If it was a separate mitzvah, an unconnected mitzvah, an unrelated mitzvah of Ava Achoreus, why wouldn't it have a simon of its own? However, the Chassam Sofer thinks that the Ramah feels otherwise. So if you look at the Chassam Sofer, I think, was the first of the Achronim to take this Manos Halevi and take this Trumas Hadeshen and make it into like a Chakira and a whole shir. And he talks about a machloket between the Ramah and the Brit Chadash. What if I send you Mishloach Manos and you say, thank you so much, but no thanks, I don't need it, I'm full. My house says there's no more space in my house, it's already up to the rafters with Mishloach Manos. Give it to someone else, it's fine. I appreciate the offer. Are you Yotzei? Says the Ramah, you're Yotzei. You start number 7, Al Divras HaBrit Chadash. Or Chaim and Tamar Tzadesha. Pick back al Ramah, Pasuk Ba'agosh, and Shalach Manot L'Reo, V'lo Ava L'Kabel, Ki Machalo. I accept it. It's as if I accept it. Yotzei Dechova. So because Brit Chadash Lo Yidan Minayin Lo Zeh. How does the Sofer analyze this? He says, Shnei Tamim, after he goes on a bit introducing Shlach Manos, but Trumas Hadeshen, Kasev, Deshi Arvachal Bali Smachos, Ulo Yastus Udasa, the Chaver Messiah Lo Ayin Sham, and now he answers a big question that everyone should have asked on the Trumas Hadeshen. If the mitzvah of Mishloach Manos is to make sure everyone has food to eat at the Purim Suda, then that should be Matanas Lev Yom. Only poor people don't have enough food to eat for the Suda. Why would we give to rich people as well? Like maybe that he should have said his Lumdish Kiddush about something else. He should have said about Matanas Lev Yom if they have enough to eat at the Suda, which is Val Chakir as well. Why would Mishloach Manos? Why would everyone send their rich friends food to make sure they have enough to eat at the Suda when only the poor people don't have enough to eat? So he answers off the Trumas. That's the big weakness of the Trumas Hadeshen. He answered the Trumas Hadeshen, B'Yishlomar, Filo Islay Tuva, Mikol Makom, Tiknu Kachlo, Vaish Misha Ein Lo, because someone says kindness. He quotes something that appears a few places in Shas, Lo Vaish Misha Ein Lo, sometimes to make it takana for the sake of poor people, but we also make it on the rich people to not embarrass the poor people. After all, the mitzvah was give poor people food to eat because they don't have what to eat for a Purim Suda. Be a little embarrassing to be the recipient of Mishloach Manos. But if we say give everyone food, then if I bring the poor person a nice meal for a Purim Suda, it's not embarrassing because he knows I bring the rich people also, and it doesn't look strange. He doesn't stand out. So the Chassam Sofer answers up. He defends the Trumas Hadeshen. It's to make sure you have what to eat. So why do I give the rich people? So not to embarrass the poor people. Apparently, doesn't Matanas Lev Yonah embarrass the poor people? You have to say no. Matanas Lev Yonah is for the schnurrers who come around asking in shul, and those people have already made a life decision to compromise their dignity because they want to collect money in shul. How about the proud poor people who would never take Matanas Lev Yonah in a million years? How are we going to give them a Purim Suda? Right? They would never they would never ask anyone for money. They're very proud. So the answer is we give our rich friends and our poor friends, and that's an excuse to give the proud poor people as well. That's how he defends Trumas Hadeshen. And then he quotes after saying Manos Halevi L'Arvas Shal Marbeus, Hefet maybe Gilasser Shal Tzar Sham Mufuzar Mufurad, Perish Makam Sharoy Leos Ha'Me'echem Yam Mufuzar Mufurad and Machlokes, L'Kach Tiknu Shlach Manos, in Cain, Yesh Lomar, Cain Sheshalach V'Herach Yibaso, Afish Demochalo, Far Yatzei Dechovaso. He says, but even if perhaps the Chalukat HaSimonim of the Mechaber and the Torah, and certainly the Ramban, supports the Trumas Hadeshen, that it's didn't Suda, to have enough food for the Suda. But maybe the Ramah supports the Mount Levi. Because the Ramah says, if I give it to you and you're mochel, and you say, no thanks, I'm okay, then you're yotzei. If the point is to give you food for the Suda, then I haven't given you any food for the Suda. But if the point, like the Mount Levi, to have friendship, then if I offer you something, you say, I appreciate the offer, okay, that's good enough. That creates great friendship. If I offer you something and say, I wouldn't touch your food with a 10-foot pole. Obviously, it's not what he's talking about. He's talking about, I offer you something, you say, I appreciate the offer, but I don't need it. So that adds friendship. If I offer something to someone and I say, I know you work near me. Would you like a tremp this morning? They say, oh, sorry, this morning I have an appointment. It still adds to Avach race because they know I wanted to help them out. So he says the Ramah must be like the Mount Halevi. And why did the Chadash say, Lo yadati minayin lozeh? I don't know where he got it from. The answer is, Minali Mari Brin is the source of the Ramah. The Bri Chadash was saying it depends on the Chakira of the True and the Deshen Mount Halevi. It's an afkamina of the Chakira. And I don't know how the Ramah knew which side of the Chakira to paskin like, because I can't be posting the Chakira. And under the influence, in the wake of this Chassam Sofer, the major Achronim all say the Chassam Sofer is right. We can't be poshet l'halacha l'maisa the Chakira of the machlokes between the Truma Zedesh and the Mount Halevi, and they're always machmer both ways. But I want to, before we get back to the original question, maybe illustrate a couple more nafkaminas of this Chakira, and then we'll see if the Chakira is so simple, if there isn't perhaps another approach. But a couple of the most classic nafkaminas of the Chakira between the Trumas Hadesha and the Mount Halevi, we've already seen two. One is the Trumas Hadesha's question, can I send non-food items? If the point is Avav Yachva Rebeus, then I would appreciate it much more if someone sent me a sefer or a gadget or housewares than if they send me another cake and a little bottle of wine that I already have 100 of. So for Avav Rebeus, the bigger the present, the more durable the present, the better. For Sarkei Suda, obviously you have to send food. The other nafkamina is a Chassam Sofer. What if the guy says, thanks but no thanks? If the point is Avbi Reis, you've accomplished it. If the point is to give him food for the Suda, then you have not given him food for the Suda. The Chassam Sofer's son, has a cute nafkamina. He says, what about from a secret admirer, right? I wake up in the morning, I open my front door, and there's a tremendous gift basket taller than me on my front stoop, and it says anonymous. So is that person Yotzei Mishloach Manos or not? It says it's Sofer number 8. Mashnistaped Mishloach Manos the way of Kabel Yotzei Mishalach Yotzei Mishloach Manos before Riyat nearly. The Talia B'Taima, the Taima Trumas Hadeshin, Mishloach Manos Sheil Malos Yisor Mishain Lo Mistaber Yotzei Gam Sheikh Chover Yodei Mishalach Lo. Sof Kol Sofi Gil Tachzam Chuban the Yishmet from Yosef Mitzvah Tzedakah, etc. What does he say? For thee, certainly his father's shot in the Trumas Hadeshin. It makes perfect sense. The point is to give someone what to eat. So I anonymously gave him what to eat, but he has a lot to eat, and maybe it's even better because the point is the poor people might need it. It's always less embarrassing to give the poor person anonymously, so he doesn't have to see you the next day and know that you gave him tzedakah. But if the point is Av Yachva Reis, then it doesn't help at all because I don't know who sent it to me, so I don't know who to be friendly with. It doesn't strengthen the social bonds between us. So that's another nafkamina. Another nafkamina could be the famous case that does not happen this year. This year, Purim is on Sunday for us and Monday for our Yerushalmi friends. But some years, Purim is, right, Purim can fall out on 4 days of the week. It can be on, for us, it can be on Sunday, it can be on Tuesday, it could be on Thursday, or it could be on Friday. When Purim is on Friday for us, it's on Shabbos for the Yerushalmiyim. And the Gemara says they remember 4 mitzvahs of the Purim. Mikra Megillah, Suda, V'shalach Manach, Matanas Yonim. My kids in elementary school say Mikra Megillah, Mishneh, V'shalach Manach, Matanas Yonim. That way they remember is the 4 mitzvahs. So they can't forget the 4 mitzvahs. So the says in the Gemara they can't do Mikra Megillah on Shabbos because of Gzera D'Ravik, you might carry it in Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, Mikra Megillah they do on Friday, like us instead. Matanash Lev Yonim always goes with Mikra Megillah because the ruling name Shel Aniyim is Suas the Mikra Megillah. The Aniyim in those days were very uneducated. Everyone was a little more uneducated in those days. The Aniyim certainly were uneducated, and they didn't know anything about halachos. All they knew is when they read the Megillah, people give us money. And they all crowd the shuls when they read the Megillah. So therefore, if we read the Megillah on Friday, they also give Matanos of Yom on Friday. What about Mishlach Manos? What about the Suda? Doesn't say anything in the Gemara Bavli. Says the Machaber, number 9, Yom Chamisha Sar Shechol Yus B'Shabbos and Koran Megillah B'Shabbos El Magdina L'Pros of Erev Shabbos. The Golden Most Matanos of Yom Mechaber Osam Bo Vayom. On Friday, they do Matanos of Yom Mikra Megillah. On Shabbos, you do the davening and the laning, Alanisim and Vayom Amalek. The Enos and Sudas Purim Yom Echad Shabbos, and they do the Suda on Sunday. That's nicknamed Purim. Sholosh, that's based on the Fush Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says you push the Suda off to Sunday because you can't do the Suda on Shabbos because it won't be Nikar. That it's Suda's Purim because they always have a fancy Suda on Shabbos anyway. Not everyone agrees with him. If you look at number 10, the Mishnah Berurah, Ve'in Osim B'chulei, the Omer Yerushalmi, Yasos on Shabbos, Amalei Yimei Mishnik, says Shem Chasam Yom Yom you can't be able to do the Suda, so you have to make a special Suda for Purim. And on Shabbos, you have a Suda anyway. Interesting, what did the Machaber leave out? He did Matanos of Yomim, he did Mikra Megillah, he did Suda, he did Lane, he did Davening. The Machaber strangely left out Mishlach Manos. Okay, so the Mishnah fills it in. Of course, Mishlach Manos is on Sunday. The Maral came, the Daiter Shasuda he Shabbos. Maral Chaviv says the Bavli disagrees with Yerushalmi. There is no Purim Misholosh. There's only Purim Kafol. It's not Misholosh. You do the Suda on Shabbos. How do you do the Suda on Shabbos? You have Shabbos Suda anyway. You add extra food for Purim. The Daiter Shasuda he Shabbos. Also, in Mais Mishalayim, right? He was the all the way back from the Shemitah controversy, the not heter Mechira controversy, but the Mechira controversy, not even Mechira. The controversy about if a Goy owns the land, does Shemitah apply, right? There's no heter Mechira. Goy all owned the land, just the Goy owned everything because they owned Eretz Yisrael in those days. He was in the Rabboni Yushalayim, who were against. He was also against the famous Smicha Chiddush of the Rabboni Tzfat. So here again, he's against the Machaber. He says no. Do the Suda on Shabbos, and that's what they did in Yerushalayim. He was forever Yerushalayim. He got to the side. He got Mishlach Manos b'Shabbos. Suda. What does the Mishnah assume? He assumes, like the Truma Zadesha, Mishlach Manos had to do with Suda, and therefore the Mishnah brings 2 days. Right? What do people do nowadays, by the way? If you're a Yerushalmi and Purim falls out on Shabbos for you, everyone makes a Suda on Sunday, and the Machmirim make 2 Sudas, one on Shabbos by adding extra food, and one on Sunday, but you'll say both days. But for our purpose, what does Mishnah assume as a davar pashut that he doesn't even need to justify? Whenever I don't know when you do the Suda, machlokes. Whenever you do the Suda, that's the day you do Mishlach Manos. Because Mishlach Manos is part of the Suda. That's a davar pashut for him. Isn't it a davar pashut for everyone? That works for the Truma Zadesha. What about the Manos HaLevi? No one holds like the Manos HaLevi that Mishlach Manos is unconnected to Suda? Of course someone does. But in order to see that, we have to flip the page. 11. The Shari Tshuva here brings down Eileen Ber Heitev, etc. And what does he say? Well, just read the underline. He says we do the Suda on Sunday. Look at the Hashmatos of the more Tzia, Rav Yaakov and then Shehezkin Gamken. He also agrees to do the Suda Sunday. The Suda is on Sunday, but Shlach Manos is Shabbos. Why? Davar b'ito ma'tov v'su'enisa. Davar b'ito ma'tov. Why would you move something when you could do it on a normal day? Why move Mishlach Manos to Sunday when you could do it on Shabbos? And also pursuing Nisa. We know all the pursuing Nisa we can get if we don't lay in the Megillah. So what's the machlokas here? The one hand Mortzi is right. Davar b'ito ma'tov. Why move something if you don't have to? You can do Mishlach Manos on Shabbos. On the other hand, what does the Mishnah say? You can, but Mishlach Manos has to go with Suda. So what's the machlokes here? Does Mishlach Manos go with Suda, or is it independent? That's exactly the Chakira. The Truma Zadesha says it's part of the Suda, so of course you do the Suda. The Manos HaLevi would say it's independent. That's a separate din. And therefore, you do it on Davar b'ito ma'tov. You do it on the day of Purim, if possible. And here it is possible. Another nafkamina could be the famous Chiddush of the Ritva. There's 2 Gersos exactly. Okay, we give a whole hour shir about what this strange line of the Gemara means. I didn't bring the works, so the Ritva quotes it very nicely. Number 12. Tani Rav Yosef Mishlach Manos Ish Le'einu Shtei Manos L'Adam Echad. Kolom L'Re'einu Ha'asher means even rich. It doesn't have to be poor. Matanos Avyonim Shtei Matanos Shtei Bnei Adam. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya Shadalei Rav Hoshaya Atma De'igla Tilsa V'Garba De'Chamri. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya sent what seems to be a nice Mishlach Manos to Rav Hoshaya, you know, there's always yourselves about that. A whole side of a choice of a choice calf, and a big thing of wine. Garis Rashi, okay, Rashi says there was a positive response. You were kind of Mishlach Manos. That's considered Manos. But longer seen Halashah, it doesn't have to be sent to more things. But in the line Girsa, this would be Hanano's Girsa, there's seen on and all of his yourselves that it was a negative feedback. A negative feedback. What you sent me, I know you were trying to say Mishlach Manos. You sent me the Tamas of Yonim. Basically, that's a bad Mishlach Manos. What do you think? We're doing the Tamas of Yonim here? So what does that mean? Perish lo haisa yakara truveina. It wasn't expensive enough. It's not a proper gift for someone like him. When he wasn't Yotzei Mishlach Manos Shloyehu. Hadar Shalach like Lomer Yehuda see a gufei egla tilsa utlas garbi yain. Then he sent back a whole calf and three containers of wine. Then Shalach lo kiyam banu Rabbeinu Mishlach Manos Shloyehu. Shtor Shura Harat Uyalach. Famous sheets of the Ritva, based on the Girsa. Again, there are two Girsas. One, Rashi's Girsa, a positive Girsa. You were kind of Mishlach Manos. There are three sheets of that Horda what the Chiddush is. But the negative Girsa being Hananel was, this Matanos of Yonam, this is not Mishlach Manos. What was so bad about it? Interestingly, one Pshat in the Achronim is what was so bad about it is that it was meat and wine, and maybe Manos need to be food, not drinks, against the Trumas Adeshen, and therefore some people are machmir to have two foods and not count a drink, even though that's not quoted in the mainstream poskim. But if you like to collect homers, here's a good one for you. The Ritva says, what was wrong with it? It was too small. Now, to me, that sounds very impressive. If someone gave me a deli sandwich, I'd be impressed. A whole side of beef and a whole big jug of wine? Okay, no, for a rich person, that's not enough. It needs to be a whole cow and three big barrels of wine. So if it's too small, it's not machuk, and it's not, you're not Yotzei Mishlach Manos, says the Ritva. Do we talk about this Chomer the Ritva? Look at 13, the Mishnah says, the Yerushalmi actually supports the Ritva. If you send a rich person something small, you're not Yotzei Mishlach Manos. Interestingly, what that means is that it's much easier for my kids to be Yotzei Mishlach Manos than me, right? If my kid goes into 7th grade and brings her friend, a tropit, and let's assume drinks count, a tropit and a kif-kef, she's Yotzei Mishlach Manos. That's great. What's better than tropit and kif-kef? That's better than salad and soup and kugel. But if I give my neighbor a tropit and kif-kef, maybe I'm not Yotzei. I have to give my neighbor a nice bottle of wine, not the bottle of wine from someone you never heard of. Not the 20 shekel bottle of wine. That's on sale because they can't get rid of it. I have to buy a nice bottle of wine and maybe, a side of beef is going a little far. But maybe some very fancy chocolates or a dried fruit platter or something to be Yotzei. It has to be chashuv. It's more than mashma. It's unfortunate Ritva. It's not mainstream psak. There's only one pshat, one gears of the Gemara, but it's not l'chachila. Therefore, another good chumrah. That you should give at least one. You only need one to be Yotzei. Mishlach Manos, that's chashuv food. That's actually something expensive and worthwhile. Okay, the Rav Sternbach, the Tshuvas on Hagos, has a great question. I already had this question before I saw the Tshuvas on Hagos. Hold on. Who's rich? If I'm rich, I have to send something expensive? Or if you're rich, I have to send something expensive to you? Says the Bir Halacha, in Sholech L'Asher, it depends on the recipient. But if you look at the Gemara, I don't know, meaning, Eina Matana L'Adam Kamohu, it's not clear what the Ritva means. Is that Rav Hoshaya was rich? Or that Rav Yehuda Nasi was rich? Rav Yehuda Nasi was certainly rich, right? Maybe if Rav Yehuda Nasi was rich. Do we care that it has to be chashuv to the sender or chashuv to the recipient? says, Rav Sternbach in 14, Shuvas on Hagos, Mitzvah Shalach Manos Haim L'Shloch L'Adam Echad Shtei Manos Yotim Kach, Aval Shtei Manos Yotim Medina Chashuvos Davka. Umash Nistapku. Doesn't say who's Nistapku. In Toli B'Chashivas Eitol Nosen She'etzol Nikra Choshev, Haim Tzorach B'Fi Oshro, or Toli B'Chashivas Eitol Makabel. Doesn't they have to be Choshev to the Noten or Choshev to the Makabel? Says Rav Sternbach, Yish Litlos. Okay, Sternbach's brisker. He likes chakiras. Yish litlos v'tam mitzvah shlach manos. So unfortunately, v'tam regas told the nosich v'gal reis manach hashuvet flowing on top. She the mekabel w'revach. So the sperm is holy b'mekabel. L'maisa roy l'hachnik k'shtei adeos from echemi mashu yishlach l'adam echad v'yanos astro. He's in the end he said machar both ways, and either one of you is rich. Send an expensive shlach manos. It might not only depend on rich, it might also depend on mechubed, right? There might be a difference between a rich 12-year-old, if counts, and a rich adult. There might be a difference between a Rosh Yeshiva and a Stam guy. But what does he say? He says it depends on the chakira. If the point is true as addition, so that the recipient will have a good suda, then it should be something the recipient wants for a suda. If the point is so av of yachav areyos, the anchor of a present is not that I got something. You know, they say it's the thought that counts. It's really true. Not in everything. My salary at my job, it's not the thought that counts. It's the money that counts. But in presents, it really is the thought that counts. I don't need presents from anyone. Presents is not a handout, it's not a subsidy. It's really the thought that counts. And therefore, if the thought that counts, it should depend on the no saying. If I stretch myself to give you something befitting me, then I'm showing a lot of avav yafar reyos, and you see that I feel very close to you, and it brings us close together. Doesn't matter how rich you are, it matters how rich I am. Basically, what Rav Sternbach is saying now is you can open it up if you want, and I'm sure you can find 100 svarim to do this. You can now add another 20 nafkaminas if you want, based on this Rav Sternbach. What Rav Sternbach saying? According to the Trumas Hadeshin, it depends more on the mikabel, because it's to help him have a suda. According to the Mon Halevi, it depends more on the noting that he should show avav yachvav areyos. Then you can add a whole host of nafkaminas if you want. For example, what if I send it to you before Purim and it arrives on Purim? Or I send it on Purim and it arrives after Purim, right? Does it depend if it's Purim when it arrives with a makabel or when the notain sends it? Or Yudalim Tetvav, right? What if an Alon Shvutnik gives to a Yerushalmi and Yudalit? Or on Tetvav? Does it depend if it's the proper day of Purim for the makabel or a proper day of Purim for the notain? The more you say, like the Truman Hadeshin, it's about helping you have a suda. He has to get it when it's Purim for him and he's eating a suda. The more it's about avav yachvav areyos, maybe it depends that I have to show avav yachvav areyos. That maybe the first time is very muchar. And it depends if it's my Purim. So that's a bunch of nafkaminas. Let's just chazer for a second, and then we'll see if this chakira is really so pashut in the first place. The Trumas Hadeshin of the Manos Halevi, some of the nafkaminas we said is number one, how about non-food items? Number two, how about if he says thanks but no thanks? There's avav yachvav areyos, but it doesn't help him eat. Number three, what about an anonymous gift? Except so far. Number four, very mochra. What if your Purim is on the 15th on Shabbos for Yerushalmi, but the suda is on the 16th? Do you send on the 16th for the suda or on the 15th just for the theme of Purim? And in addition, chashivas doesn't have to be chashiv to the person receiving it that he wants to eat it, or chashiv to the giver that he really shows how much he cares. I'll tell you another nice chumrah I just saw today. That Haggah the brisker Rav. I never did this until now. Maybe now I'll try to be makbid. Every partner wants to get a new chumrah. So the brisker Rav is makbid. You're probably all makbid on this already because you're just nice people. But the brisker Rav was makbid that when he got mishloach manos, he would always open it up, see who it was from, and look at it. Right? And why? He says, well, because the Manos Halevi has to bring avav yachvav areyos, and if I don't even look at it, or even if I wait to look at it for 2 days later, when I'm all recovered, etc., maybe I need the avav yachvav areyos on Purim. Therefore, he always looked at it and appreciated. Whoa, what a nice present Ploni sent me, so that he can have avav yachvav areyos. And I know a lot of houses, they just sort of come in and someone unwraps them, puts them on a big table, and you just eat them. It might help you for your suda. But maybe you're lacking the avav yachvav areyos. So he was always makbid to dafka look at it on Purim, so you could appreciate how nice his fellow Jew was and how close he felt to him. Now, these are two tzadim of a very classic chakira. It's so pasha that those are the two tzadim, the only two tzadim. There's a strange door number 15. Abai bar Oven, Rabbi Chani bar Oven, machvi sudai sudasai ladadi. They would switch the sudas with each other. What does this mean? According to the Rambam, he ends Mishloach Manos with 16. Someone has no money, they're dirt poor. We don't even know people who are that poor. But once upon a time, poor meant you had no food to eat, and almost poor means you only had food to eat and that's it. So what if you only have food to eat and that's it? How do you do Mishloach Manos? That the Norse is teaching us, if two guys are poor and all they have is one meal to eat, they switch with each other and then they're both Mekayim, Mishloach Manos, and they both have what to eat. Okay, great kula of the Rambam. Rashi over says, number 17, Makalfi Sudasayu, Ze Ochel and Ze B'Purim Shashana Zo, Uveshniya Soy Chameri Bo. No, 1 year, first of all, he didn't say anything about being poor, right? 1 year, Reuben would invite Shimon for Purim Suda, and next year, Shimon would invite Reuben for Purim Suda. That's actually, I don't know anyone who does the Rambam's not anymore. Baruch Hashem knows that. People are poor, not that poor. Now, lots of people do this. Two families, Schwartz and the Greenbergs, and one year Greenberg hosts, and the next year Schwartz hosts. Not a crazy tendency at all. Says Rashi, the Makar, that is in the Gemara. The question is, Beis Yosef already asked the question. I didn't put the Beis Yosef in the chorus because we don't think of this question on our own. How does that help them be Yotzei Mishloach Manos? Tainach, if Schwartz invites Greenberg, Schwartz is maybe Yotzei Mishloach Manos. He didn't send, but like he sent it from his side of the table to the other side of the table, maybe that counts. He gave food. So Schwartz will be Yotzei Mishloach Manos by giving food to Greenberg. How is Greenberg Yotzei Mishloach Manos? Reuben invites Shimon this year, Reuben's Yotzei, Shimon isn't. Shimon invites Reuben next year, Shimon's Yotzei, Reuben isn't. How did that help him be Yotzei Mishloach Manos? So the Rav said he thinks that that question was based on a misunderstanding. Rashi never said the word Mishloach Manos. It's the end of the sugya Mishloach Manos in Shas. But the Rav says, no, Rashi has a totally different shot. Rashi says it's not about Mishloach Manos at all. It's just about the mitzvah of Suda. What's a happier Suda? To eat by yourself or to socialize? Everyone knows to socialize. In Megillah, Rashi says, Mishpacha u'mishpacha v'ir v'ir, means mishpachos invite each other over for Purim Suda. So here we see it's a kiyum to invite your friends for Purim Suda because it's a nice simcha. When you invite your friends for Purim Suda, nothing to do with Mishloach Manos. But the Magen Avraham says something else. Says the Magen Avraham 18, Nirali, Misha Ochel Shulchan Kavir V'Heichem Lo Klom Pater Mishloach Manos. Whoa! If you're a guest for Purim Suda, you're pater for Mishloach Manos. Probably everyone here. Magen Avraham thinks you're pater for Mishloach Manos if you're a guest. The Kachmak and Sasper Rashi Gavin Mechlu Suda Saila Dodi. In the Maisi doesn't want to rely on it, since that's the only shot you can think of in Rashi. How are you Yotzei Mishloach Manos if Reuben invites Shimon? Reuben's Yotzei by inviting Shimon. How is Shimon Yotzei? The answer is, Shimon must be pater. Only a host of Purim Suda is Chayim Mishloach Manos. Only someone who makes Purim Suda in their house is Chayim Mishloach Manos. A guest is pater for Mishloach Manos. He really thinks it's Pshat Rashi. Well, Maisa, don't rely on this, he says. Tzorchiyim, what's his maskana? Tzorchiyim and Tov L'Hachmir. Sounds like the what to rely on, Tov L'Hachmir. What's the svara? Why should a guest be pater for Mishloach Manos? The strangest shit ever. Since when is a guest pater from a mitzvah in the Torah or in the Nach? Why does a guest be pater from Mishloach Manos? So I think you can explain this by the Rav something else the Rav suggested. He didn't specifically mention this Magen Avraham. He suggests that maybe there's a third way to understand Mishloach Manos. Yes, like the Trumas Hadeshen that's din in Suda. And that explains all the nafkaminas that the Mechaber puts in the same siman as Suda, and that the Mishnah Berurah thinks it has to be the same day as Suda, etc. But it's a din in Suda, but not necessarily to help your friend have a Suda. After all, that's a little strange. Why give money to everyone just to not embarrass the poor people? It's a very dachok mechanism. No, it's a din in Suda, but it's not a din in Suda where someone might not have what to eat for the Purim Suda. No, it's a different kind of din in Suda. It's a din in Suda in this way. It's a little more like Moses Halevi. It's a din that I have to share my Suda with my friends. And that's different from Matanas of Yonah. Matanas of Yonah is about giving people what they need. Matanas of Yonah. Mishloach Manos is not about giving people what, it's a din in Suda, but not about giving someone what they need like the Trumas Hadeshen. It's a third shot. It's a din of sharing my Suda with others. How do I share my Suda with others? You could be like, who is it, Abai Barav or Pina Barav? You can invite someone to your Suda. Not everyone can invite someone to your Suda. It doesn't always work out technically. Great, just send them some food from my house. That's sharing my Suda with them. The Rambam talks about how the greatest Simchas Yom Tov, the greatest Simchas Purim is to share your Suda with poor people. Okay, the greatest share with poor people. The medium is to share with rich people. And the lowest is to eat yourself. A Suda should be something that we share. Maybe the point is, it's like the Manos HaLevi, it's about the Jews celebrating together. But it's not because we might not have what to eat. It's because the Kiyum in Suda to share the Suda with others. The Simcha of the Suda is to share the Simcha with others. And Matanas of Yonim is helping poor people, not sharing my Simcha with them. Mishloach Manos is sharing my Simcha with others, whether they're rich or poor, whether they need it or not. I'm sharing my Simcha with them by sharing my Suda with them. That's why it goes with Suda, but it's really about sharing with others. And then the Magen Avraham makes sense. The truth is, okay, maybe I could have said a little different Magen Avraham, I might have said a little different Magen Avraham. Pshat and Rashi is that you're yotzei Mishloach Manos by inviting a guest to your house or by going to someone's house as a guest because you're sharing a Suda. Magen Avraham doesn't go that far. Magen Avraham says maybe a guest is potter. Why? If it didn't sharing your Suda, only someone who makes the Suda is chayav to share it with others. If I'm invited to your Suda, then I'm yotzei because you shared the Suda with others. I'm participating in the Suda that was shared with others. The guest is potter because the din in sharing the Suda, he's attending and participating in the Suda that was already shared. So the guest is yotzei together with the host sharing Suda with others. Now we have 3 tzadim of Mishloach Manos. Okay, we only have a few minutes left. We have to get back to where I started. Let's remember where I started. What's pshat in the Binyan Tzion? That instead of mitzvah yosem mishlucho, dafka yishtem with the shliach. Nearly is 92 pshatim. What al pi lumdus? Al pi the Manos HaLevi. I don't know how to explain it. Al pi the Rav Magen Avraham Pshat. I'm not sure how to explain it. Although maybe you can think of something. Come back and tell me. There are some suggestions. But al pi the Trumas Hadeshen. I don't know how to explain it. If it's in Suda, I don't know why you need a shliach. But maybe al pi the Manos HaLevi, you could say if it's in Avav Yaakov Areus. If I send you Mishloach Manos, the 2 of us become close. What's even better? It's even better is get a 3rd person. If I send you Mishloach Manos with Yisrael David, then all 3 of us become close. After all, what does the Gemara say? Right? That if someone brings me something, I appreciate the person who brought it to me more than the person who actually paid for it and sent it. Because I see it with my own eyes. If I send a shliach to you, then we have Avav Yaakov, we need 3 Jews instead of only 2. And not only that, you and I are already friends. So, okay, it's not just Kiddush. If I send with a shliach who wouldn't have given you on his own, then there's another person invited to the circle who was not yet a friend and is now joining in this circle of friendship. So maybe it's not Avav Yaakov Areus, you can explain the Binyan Tzion. It adds to the Avav Yaakov Areus to bring a 3rd party into the equation and have 1 more person join in this expression of closeness and friendship. Okay, ad kan al pi lumdus. However, I think there's another header for the Binyan Tzion, not al pi lumdus, but al pi philosophy. I don't mean fancy, highfalutin philosophy. You have to start reading Aristotle and Averroes. I mean, shoot or some mikra philosophy. Because I'll say in number 19, Esther min haTorah minayim, v'anochi haster aster, espanai, etc. Esther is about Hester Panim. Okay, this is a drash, but the meaning, the philosophical meaning behind this drash, I think is pretty obvious for all of us. What is practically unique about Megillas Esther? That it does not have Shem Hashem in it. What's fascinating about Megillas Esther is there are other books of Tanakh that have Shem Hashem. Koheles has Hashem's name in the book. Exactly what does Hashem do in Sefer Koheles? I mean, nothing. No one does anything in Sefer Koheles. People just think a lot. Right? Hashem's name is in Megillas Rus all over the place. What does Hashem do in Megillas Rus? I know the same thing he does. Same thing he did yesterday and the day before. I know he runs the world. Sometimes there's a lot of crops. Sometimes there's a little crop. Sometimes one guy bumps into another guy. Sometimes he bumps into a different guy. You know, people get married. People this, that. People have babies. Normal workings of the world. Lots of books that do not have Hashem's name in them, but they don't necessarily have a revelation of the Yad Hashem in this world. Megillas Esther is exactly the opposite. It's practically the only book that doesn't have Shem Hashem in it. But it's the only one of the few books in the Tanakh that you just can't read the shot of the story without seeing Hashem screaming at you, "Hello, I'm right here running the world." Right? Megillas Rus, if you told a secularist Megillas Rus happened, they would believe you. Yeah, I mean, the love stories happen all the time, and then in the end, people have babies, and everyone's happily ever after, and that's like normal life. All right? If you told same true for you told the secularists, say for Ezra and Nehemiah happened there, yeah, people go, they try to build a Beis HaMikdash, it's not so pasha, they barely succeed, wonderful. I told the secularists Megillas Esther happened, I don't know what they would do. They would say, sorry, I'm hard of hearing. I don't understand what you're saying. Because Megillah Esther cannot be true if not for the fact that Hashem runs the world. There's just too many coincidences, one or two we can handle, right? But we all know Megillah Esther, right? Haman wanted to destroy the Jews, and it so happened that the secret hidden identity queen happened to be Jewish. And that's not enough. Mordechai, her cousin, happened to overhear a plot to kill the king and have an in. And if that's not enough, of course, on the night that Haman was waiting to ask Ahasuerus to hang Mordechai on the gallows, the king happened to not be able to sleep, and his Sefer Zechronos happened to be open to the page where Mordechai saved his life, that he'd forgotten, etc. You can't even tell over the story of Esther without a lot of happened to, right? It's too much of a coincidence. Basically, Megillah Esther is saying, Hashem's name is not there. Why is Hashem's name not there? There's no Nes Nigla in Megillah Esther. No Esther Makos, no Kriyas Yamsuf. It's all regular, secular, natural workings of the world. But it's not, because it can't be coincidence. It's basically the one book, right? Why is Esther such a great book of Tanakh? Because, like, on the one hand, Shemos is very important. Our whole belief is based on all of the tremendous miracles of Revelation. On the other hand, I don't have this nowadays, right? What about nowadays? That's where Megillah Esther is maybe the most important book of Tanakh. Hashem doesn't write his name in black and white in history, but if you read between the lines, he's always there. Look at nowadays. I want to zoom out. We've had a tough last 6 months in this country, and it's not over yet. But look at the last 75 odd years. You know, like really, like 2,000 years later, like a dispersed people came back from their golus, and after the Holocaust managed to like build a state and fight off like, you know, tens of millions of enemies with, I mean, you have to hear Amital's description, what it was like fighting in the Milchemet Hatzbah in 48, right? Basically, a crack unit in the Israeli army in 48 was if there was a commander who spoke a language that every soldier in the unit understood, because then they were a crack unit. They could all take orders from the commander. There wasn't one guy with Yiddish and one guy with Hebrew and one guy with Arabic, etc. It was nothing. The odds were a zillion to 1 against. And now that we won, I mean, everyone loves to hate us. Everyone loves to hate us because we're successful. Everyone loves to hate the successful people nowadays. Why? Because we're one of the most powerful militaries in the world, even though we're like this tiny slice of 9 million people, one of those powerful economies in the world. It makes no sense historically. There's only 2 ways to explain the last 75 years of Jewish history. Either being anti-Semite and say, well, Jews are really the devil and they have secret power that no one knows about that enable them to do things no one else can do, or say Hashem runs the world. This is our reality. Megillah Esther is all about how Hashem doesn't have to do open miracles for you to recognize that he runs the world. The Gemara says very famously, Hashem forced the Jews to accept the Torah. Rav says, okay, we don't have to keep the Torah. It was onus. Onus doesn't count. There was no das. It was coerced. Say, no, don't worry, you re-accepted the days of Ahasuerus, and now we have to keep the Torah. What does this mean? There's more than one shot to what this means. It says, Hashem didn't hold a mountain over our heads and force us to keep the Torah. Give me a break. Why would he do that? It means he intellectually forced us to keep the Torah. Keeping the Torah means believing in Hashem. Believing Hashem runs the world. Why should we believe Hashem runs the world? Well, after Esher Mako and Kriyat Yamsuf, you couldn't not believe Hashem runs the world. He proved it to you beyond a shadow of a doubt. So we're forced to accept the Torah. That's a good excuse. Maybe nowadays, when I don't see proof of Hashem, I don't have to keep the Torah. It's not fair. They only kept the Torah when they were intellectually forced to, because Hashem proved its existence. Why do I have to keep the Torah nowadays when I don't know if Hashem exists, if he runs the world? The answer is Hadar Kiblu Achashverosh. That's exactly what the book of Megillah Esther is all about. When Hashem doesn't do Nisim Niglim for us, when Hashem's name is not written in the black and white, just read between the lines and you'll see it right there. It's about looking from where we are nowadays in Jewish history and saying, I don't know of any miracles, but I know of hundreds of miracles. It just depends how you define miracle. It's not written in black and white, but between the lines, there's no other way to explain the world but miracles. I think that is a crucial theme and resonant theme of Purim. If we just take that back to where we started, let's go back to the v'meshloach mনত. I send Nehemiah to bring you an amazing food basket. And what do you say? Say, Nehemiah, thanks so much for the food basket. I really appreciate this. It's amazing. It's so nice. Nehemiah says, well, don't thank me.
I'm only a shliach, shluchos shel demoso. It looks like I'm giving it to you, but I'm really not. Shluchos shel demoso, there's someone you can't see behind the scenes who's really sending it to you. I'm only a shliach. Basically, what shlichus means is that every Purim I receive something, and I look at who's giving it to me, and I say, thanks. And then he says, no, there's more to life than what you see with your eyes. There's behind the scenes, there's someone who really gets credit. I don't get the credit. There's someone you can't see who is really giving you what you have. That is what Purim is all about on both sides. It's all about looking behind the scenes and seeing who's really directing things and who really gives us what we have and who we really appreciate it. And maybe that is a philosophical pshat in the Acțion, v'משלוח mנות איש לרעהו, to show you that you get a lot of good things, but don't just look at where it looks like it's coming from. Read between the lines, find the Shem Hashem that's written in the white space in between the black ink, look at who's really sending it to you, realize there's a Shalech behind the Shliach who really runs everything, and give her Shem HaChod in that direction, and that's perhaps the best way to be Mekayim, the theme of Purim. Thank you everyone for coming to learn with me this evening, and I wish everyone an inspiring and uplifting Purim, and we should be Zoch Chodesh Shenepach Lahem, the Simcha L'Yom Tov, and see Yeshuas and Achamos for ourselves and for all the Klal Yisrael.